G'day, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another crazy dose of net zero and EV insanity in MGUY EV news for Sunday the 22nd of June 2025. Be sure to follow me on the usual socials for more content, links in the description, and please make sure you're subscribed and have enabled all notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you'd like to support this channel, why not buy me a coffee? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. So the message that we're putting out that EVs are not the best idea for most people is getting through, it seems, certainly in the UK, because more and more people are becoming more and more skeptical of this push for EVs, which is a good thing because whilst EVs might have some very limited use cases, such as short trips within cities for people who have off-street parking and off-street charging, to mandate them for everybody on the planet or in the country is just insane. They're just one part of the overall energy mix. You cannot force people who don't have the use case for an EV to buy them. And I'm glad to say that in the UK, this message seems to be getting through. British drivers uncertain over electric car switch, with millions hesitant to ditch petrol and diesel. Good. There are more than 1 million electric vehicles already on UK roads. Well, there's one born every minute, isn't there? New research has revealed that uncertainty about electric vehicle adoption amongst UK motorists has risen sharply to 40%. This marks a significant increase from 27% in 2024 and 22% 3 years ago, according to new data. That's massive. So it's gone up from 22% in 2022 to 40%. Skepticism about EVs. Well, that's good. It's heading in the right direction. The latest consumer survey highlights growing hesitation about the switch to electrification, despite ongoing discussions about sustainability and reduced running costs. The findings suggest that confidence in committing to EVs remains elusive for many drivers, even as the automotive industry continues to push towards electrification. This upward trend in uncertainty comes at a critical time for the UK's electric vehicle transition. The primary barrier deterring potential EV buyers is the high initial purchase price, which concerns 59% of respondents, a substantial rise from 42% in 2024. Well, it's all going in the wrong direction, isn't it? I mean, or the right direction if you're looking at it from my perspective. Access to charging infrastructure continues to trouble 62% of motorists, though this represents a modest improvement from 68% last year. And the one thing they're not mentioning, of course, is depreciation. Why would you buy an EV that would depreciate almost half its value in 3 years? It's just not a sensible investment to make. There are so many reasons why you shouldn't buy an EV, and it seems the message is getting through, which is quite good. And this is a hilarious story because finally they're admitting that moving to net zero is actually more expensive for electricity prices than regular fossil fuels or nuclear. I mean, those of us who have common sense can see this straight away, but people in government and the EV zealots and the net zero zealots, they don't seem to get this. And so they've been fudging figures. They're doing it here in Australia. CSIRO, the science organisation, is always coming out with research that says, oh, net zero is going to be so much cheaper. But it's absolutely not the case. If you look at the correlation between percentage of renewables and electricity prices, it's a clear positive correlation. More renewables, higher prices. And here's a report that shows that the government finally admits fossil fuel use is cheaper than net zero technology, because of course it is. The UK government has quietly admitted that using low carbon technologies essential to the rapid drive to net zero are more expensive than when fossil fuels are used as an energy source, City AM can reveal. Labour ministers are expected to double down on expanding the use of green technologies to lower costs. To lower costs? What? As the Treasury and Department for Business and Trade are set to unveil the UK's industrial strategy next week. But officials working under Energy Secretary Ed Miliband told the Committee of Public Accounts, which scrutinises expenditure by different government bodies, explained higher electricity prices made low-carbon technologies more expensive, despite the government linking the development of green technology to more affordable energy bills. The admission came in the minutes for a PAC report, which is publicly available online, detailing the government's responses to recommendations made on energy policy. Well, despite the fact that the sun and the wind are notionally free, the infrastructure that's required to capture them is certainly not free. And the scale of the infrastructure that's required to harness the wind and the sun is massive. And it only lasts 20 years. And then you've got to do the whole thing again. And it's so disparate, spread out around the country. It has to be very thinly spread across a wide area. And this is expensive. And it's obvious. I mean, it's always been obvious to me that this is going to be more expensive. But, you know, the scientists and the net zero zealots have been fudging the figures to make it look like net zero is actually cheaper than fossil fuels, and it's an absolute lie, and I'm glad it's being finally exposed. And in another backtrack in the UK, they're having to go back on their decision not to drill for oil in the North Sea, which was absolutely insane. There's enough fuel under that area of the North Sea to keep the UK going for generations, and yet because net zero is such a blinkered and blind ideology, they basically put a ban on it. This would be the cheapest way to power the UK, not via net zero. And Miliband, he's having to backtrack on this massive U-turn. Energy Secretary preparing to change rules that blocked Rosebank and Jackdaw sites. Two of the North Sea's most controversial drilling projects are poised to go ahead as Ed Miliband rewrites the rules on carbon emissions. The Energy Secretary has changed the rules on Britain's greenhouse gas emissions, which were relied on by a court last autumn to block Equinor's Rosebank oil field off Shetland and Shell's Jackdaw gas field off Aberdeen. The move paves the way for the construction of the giant oil fields and possibly opens the door for more stalled fossil fuel projects in British waters to be restarted. Both companies immediately announced plans to seek new licenses for the projects. We can confirm that we will submit an emissions assessment in full compliance with the government's new environmental guidance, said Equinor. Well, again, this is just common sense, isn't it, really? The UK is going to be struggling to keep its grid going once these fossil fuel and nuclear plants are not providing baseload generation. And so, you know, this is what happens when you meet reality full in the face. And Miliband's had to make this embarrassing U-turn, and there will be probably many more that will come in the future. So this is a rather sad story about a guy who's lost his life in a Cybertruck. It just goes to show that when a lithium-ion battery fire gets going, the temperatures are so high and the fires are so intense that it effectively cremates the human body. You know, most fires don't do that because they're not hot enough. That's, you know, it's why, you know, most house fires and things like that, the bodies, it's all a bit grim, this, but they're superficially burned, but not completely destroyed. But in an EV fire, and like this Cybertruck fire, you're effectively doing a cremation, which is just horrific. Defectively designed, Cybertruck burned so hot in crash that the drivers, yeah, you can read it on screen. There's my challenge to Elon, attorney S. Scott West told The Independent. Make these vehicles so safe that I don't have to do this anymore. A Tesla Cybertruck owner in Texas was unable to escape after rolling it into a ditch last year, experiencing an unthinkable demise as the batteries powering the $100,000 stainless steel SUV burst into flames with such intensity the helpless drivers, blah blah, you can read it on the screen. Michael Sheehan, 47, burned to death at 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. A fire so hot it experienced thermal fracture, according to a gut-wrenching lawsuit his widow and parents have now filed against the electric auto manufacturer headed up by billionaire Elon Musk. He was 8 inches shorter in length than he was before this accident. That's thermal fracture. This is the reality of EV battery fires. They are so intense and so hot, they can do immense damage, not just to the human body, but to buildings, structures. They are catastrophic. Ships, they can sink ships because of the temperature and the fact that you can't put them out easily. What a shocking story. Anyway, another lawsuit that Tesla will have to defend somehow. This always makes me laugh because when they talk about heat waves in the UK, it means it's got above 25 Celsius. Wow, so hot. But the reality is, of course, that with the move to heat pumps, which are effectively reverse cycle air conditioning units, people are going to be using those to cool their properties when it is hot. And those devices draw a lot of energy from the grid. And if you've got a net zero, unstable, unreliable grid, there's going to be problems. And this is basically just summarizing all those issues. Heat waves will trigger net zero meltdown. Electric cars and heat pumps among technologies at risk of breaking down or exploding. Net zero technologies will backfire during heat waves, Ed Miliband has been warned. Heat pumps, electric cars and solar panels are among the various decarbonisation initiatives being pushed by the Energy Secretary to help the UK reach net zero by 2050. No hope of that happening, by the way. But these technologies are at risk of breaking down, exploding and causing power cuts, and may need to be turned off in hot weather, experts have warned. A report commissioned by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, that's the most oxymoronic departmental title you can imagine. Energy security, net zero. They're the opposite of one another. Warned that much of the energy grid and infrastructure was at risk from warm weather over 27 Celsius. Oh, so hot. Britain is said to have its first heat wave of 2025 this weekend, with health officials warning of a risk to life from temperatures of more than 30 degrees Celsius. Well, that's because most places in the UK don't have any air conditioning anyway. The report offers multiple warnings about the fallibility of net zero technologies in such temperatures. Well, the thing is that heat pumps work perfectly well when it's hot, because that's what they're there for, air conditioning. But what they don't work well in is when you've got a grid that's about to fall over. And so as long as there's plenty of electricity, air conditioning units are fine. But if there isn't, then yes, they can cause all sorts of problems. And that's exactly what they're discovering here. All these articles obviously linked in the description below. Go and read them for yourself. Really, this is just to point you in the right direction. So yeah, go and read them. Let me know what you think of these articles in the comments. Now, this article is a timely reminder that hydrogen is not the answer. EVs are not the answer, but hydrogen is not the answer either. If you think net zero electrical infrastructure, EV charging infrastructure is expensive and cumbersome, you ain't seen nothing yet, because hydrogen is a world of pain compared to electricity infrastructure. It's a very difficult gas to work with. Not only does it have to be stored at immense pressures, low temperatures, but also it has a knack of deteriorating the steel in the pipes that actually holds the stuff. So it's always trying to escape. It's such a tiny molecule, it's always trying to escape. And this is just the story of a hydrogen-based taxi firm, ironically called Hype, which has gone out of business because hydrogen is just not an option. And just to finally finish this story on hydrogen, you have to make hydrogen somehow. It's not a fuel in itself. It's just an energy storage system. So, you have to electrolyze water to make it. using electricity, or there are other chemical processes to make it, but they all use more energy than you get back from the hydrogen at the end of the process anyway. So it makes no sense whatsoever. No sense whatsoever. From hydrogen hope to EV reality, how hype subsidy bubble burst. Hype, once celebrated as a poster child for hydrogen mobility in Europe, has abandoned hydrogen as its primary fuel source and has pivoted to solely electric vehicles for taxis. Well, compared to hydrogen, EVs are a godsend. This pivot should not surprise anyone who has been closely tracking the consistent and inevitable collapse of hydrogen-powered transportation ventures around the globe. The story behind Hype's decision to abandon hydrogen illustrates clearly what happens when financial reality confronts overly optimistic, subsidy-dependent business models. Well, I couldn't have written it better myself. That's exactly right. It's like a school science experiment. Hydrogen power, great in small quantities, very small scale, pilot programs. But as soon as you try and scale it up, just impossible. So just a timely reminder that hydrogen isn't the answer either. And finally, this story, I was so horrified when I read the headline here, but it has a happy ending, which I'm glad to say. It's only vaguely related to electric cars, and it could have happened to any car, but it's such a great story. I thought I would include it as my final item today. Cat trapped in rim of e-car. Pöchlarn Fire Brigade was able to help, thank goodness. But what a story. The Pöchlarn Volunteer Fire Brigade had to be called out on Friday morning in an unusual animal rescue. A driver noticed a cat that had hidden in the rim of the rear tyre while disconnecting his electric vehicle from the power connection, and could no longer get out of this predicament himself. The man first tried to flee the animal himself but did not succeed. He then notified the fire department. The Pöchlarn Fire Brigade lifted the vehicle with the help of a jack and began to loosen screws on the wheel to give the cat an escape route. While this work was still being done, the wheel moved slightly and the cat took the opportunity to free itself from its predicament on its own. She then disappeared quickly and apparently uninjured from the scene. Thanks to the attention and quick actions of the vehicle owner, a potentially tragic outcome could be prevented, emphasized the platform. So there's some photos here. This is the one that's, you can see the cat's tail or its paw or something sticking out of the wheel there. Oh my God, thank God the guy didn't just drive off. What a horrible outcome that would have been. But safe kitty, which is always a good story to end on. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks very much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Bye for now. If you've got any tips or stories, go there. If you'd like to watch another video, go there. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, go there. And please subscribe to this channel.